안녕하세요. 매일매일 운동하기를 실천하고 있는 동탄 왕코입니다. 여기 한쪽 쏠렸네. 어, 날씨가 많이 추워졌습니다, 여러분. 감기 조심하세요. 오늘 피 뽑았어요. 여기 피를 뽑았습니다. 고지혈증 약을 먹고 있어서 콜레스테롤 수치를 낮추기 위한 약을 먹고 있는데 평생 먹어야 된다고 하더라고요. 에휴, 귀찮아. 약 먹는 거 진짜 귀찮은데. 어쨌든 오늘 피를 뽑았기 때문에 팔 운동을 안 하고 스트레칭 조금이랑 스쿼트 조금만 하고 안 하겠습니다. 미용실도 가야 돼요. 머리 염색하러 가야 됩니다. 흰머리가 장난이 아니에요. 머리를 다듬고 검은색으로 염색하고 오겠습니다.
Great things.
I'm Halagarani in London, and this is CNN.
Welcome back to our viewers all around the world. I'm John Vaughan. You're watching CNN Newsroom. It became known as the Sweden model, a light touch to pandemic restrictions, personal responsibility over government intervention. But now daily infections on the rise once again. Sweden, though, is sticking with the Sweden model. This report from CNN's Phil Black.
A gym in central Stockholm. Sweden's government says this is dangerous, but it won't shut them down. And those working hard at this socially distanced class don't want to stop.
Workout for me, it's all I got right now. So I need to do this as long as I can, and for all the members as well. They are so happy that we're still doing it.
Perhaps they'd feel differently if they saw this. Uppsala Hospital, the ICU. A ventilated patient is being prepped for helicopter transfer to another facility with more free beds. You're surprised that you're already having to juggle capacity like this?
Not surprised, no. That we expected.
After a quiet summer, the coronavirus is again surging in Sweden. This isn't like the spring peak. It's nowhere near as intense yet, but it feels to the staff here so familiar. They are tired and frustrated because there is a sense that this could have been avoided. A powerful second wave hasn't changed the essence of Sweden's distinctive approach to slowing the spread. Still, no forced lockdown, few rules, mostly just advice on social distancing with an emphasis on personal responsibility. On the front line, they say it's not enough.
We need to put some, consequences for not doing these things.
Enforcement.
Yeah, enforcement.
Sweden's official list of recommended behaviour is tougher now. It reads more like a voluntary lockdown, discouraging all non-essential mixing.
Can you hear me?
But Anders Tegnell, the architect of Sweden's approach, admits too many aren't following his advice. So that's the key difference. Your recommendations aren't enforceable.
So far, during the spring, this worked really well. We managed to get people to stop meeting each other to a great extent. If we can get back to that level of follow up on our advice, I think we can handle the situation also during this fall.
Go on, flex.
Yes.
Make him look angry. Tegnell is lionized here.
He has been our national hero in this crisis. He has put out guidelines that have kept our freedom.
There's broad support for the country's policies, even though officials admit Sweden failed its elderly. Almost 90% of people who've died so far were over 70. And Sweden's total death toll is more than 4 times the combined figure of its Nordic neighbours, all of which embraced tougher measures. Hello.
Welcome.
But even among the sick, you meet advocates for prioritizing freedom. Anders Eidsvik knows the suffering COVID-19 can cause.
It shouldn't be too easy to close down the society, I believe.
Sweden is sticking with a model that relies on consent instead of legal force, but it's now asking people to voluntarily give up more than ever before, and it's not yet clear they're willing to do it. Phil Black, CNN, Stockholm.
Because of the coronavirus incubation period, the current surge in daily infections is a reflection of how fast COVID-19 was spreading a few weeks ago, which means no matter what is done now to slow the spread, those daily numbers will continue to surge, and so too hospital admissions. CNN's Omar Jimenez has an exclusive report from Odessa, Texas, on what this crisis looks like in an overwhelmed hospital.
It's a reality this part of Texas has only seen in its nightmares. The ICU at Odessa Regional Medical Center in Odessa, Texas, is at its capacity with COVID-19 patients.
Even with this hospital at maximum capacity, they're still trying to find places to put COVID-19 patients. All of the beds that you see in this section, curtained off, at the moment, did not exist before the pandemic. Now, it's filled to its absolute capacity. All patients here literally are fighting for their lives.
We lost about 10 patients last week, and one of them had been on a ventilator for about a month. The ones that are here now, on average, they've been on a vent for about a week or so.
Denise Morning
We're getting closer, okay?
is an acute care nurse practitioner.
There was only a few times in the summer where we were really pushed to the extreme, but now for the last few weeks, we're busting out of the seams.
But she and everyone else remain at war with the virus, even as some patients begin to take a turn for the worse.
When you first have to make that declaration, what is the first thing that goes through your mind?
Please, not another one. You know, it's a prayer. It's inevitable and we know what's going to happen, but the probability of it being a good outcome is very, very low.
But most are able to fight it off.
Look at you!
And turn the corner. Ruben Romero is feeling better after 2 weeks in the hospital and says this isn't a game. I asked why.
Me dijiste que este no es un juego. ¿Por qué?
Porque esto es una cosa muy seria.
Because this is really serious, he says. This virus is not for people to be playing with. It's very dangerous. It attacks your entire body. I'm living it, he says. And it's become life for so many in this part of the state. Hospital officials in Odessa say anywhere from 35 to 40% of the people getting tested are testing positive for COVID-19. They fear becoming what El Paso has become, mobile morgues for the dead, hundreds in the ICU amid record hospitalizations, and roughly 1 in every 24 people actively with COVID-19. It's required a regional coordination like never before.
In a relatively short period of time, our hospitals have added over 600 beds.
Wow.
Even with that, we have flown out about 84 ICU patients to other communities in Texas.
In smaller towns, once thought to have escaped the virus's grip, find themselves right in the crosshairs. Towns like La Mesa, Texas, near Odessa. Shelley Barron was hospitalized twice with COVID-19, a diagnosis she's hearing more and more in her community.
The scary word is positive. I'm positive. I tested positive. We've got 2 more right now. We experienced a death in our church yesterday. This stuff is real. It's scary.
Medical Arts Hospital, where she was mostly treated, now has an entire wing dedicated to COVID-19 patients. Transformations that have become shared experiences.
We're actually sending home patients on home oxygen to recover at home. That's not something we would normally do, but there is no space.
All for a months-long fight with no clear signs of an end.
People aren't taking the precautions that they need. Yes, we're frontline here in the hospital, but the real frontline is on the streets, in the grocery stores. Wash your hands, wear your mask, stay away. I promise that the little bit of time and the little bit of effort it takes outside of here is worth it. Because once you're here, wearing a mask is better than having a tube down your throat. I promise.
And Denise went on to say that in the beginning, she and her coworkers were cheered as frontline workers. Now she says she's getting threats as people believe she's the reason they can't come see their loved ones. The hospital is working with local officials here to request a mobile morgue.
Oh.
And all of this comes as the state of Texas set yet another record for daily coronavirus cases. Omar Jimenez, CNN, Odessa, Texas.
Well, some obvious advice from a former chairman of the Federal Reserve. Alan Greenspan, just one of many who say controlling the coronavirus pandemic should be the #1 priority in the United States. He spoke earlier to CNN.
I've never seen this particular situation all during my professional experience, anything like this with which we have to handle in a manner when we know very little about its internal dynamics. In other words, trying to forecast where the virus is going is, at this particular stage, very little more than a guess.
Well, from enhanced unemployment benefits to temporarily prohibiting evictions, many key relief programs from the US government either have expired or will expire by the end of the year. It's unclear what will happen next and what the impact will be, not just on the US economy, but the global economy as well. CNN's John Defterios, now live from Abu Dhabi. So that's the big question here. We've talked a lot about the stimulus package and how it's stalled in Congress, and this money is desperately needed by so many people. So what happens if it doesn't go through? What are we looking at, and what's the knock-on effect?
Well, there are at least 3 programs that I can count here, John, that will expire by the end of the year. Extraordinary. It's almost like the Grinch who stole Christmas, because between the 26th of December and the 31st, and then going into 2021. Now, 2 that stood out for me in a year that most people would like to wipe away, and they have to deal with small businesses. John, the Payment or Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, was designed for small businesses to be able to pay their employees because they're responsible for 80% of the jobs in the United States. There's another one for gig workers or freelance contractors to continue to get paid because a lot of the jobs they have are dried up. We're looking at 7 million employees in that program, and that will expire at the end of the year. And finally, you talked about the supplemental payments. That lasted for only 4 months, John. It was an extra $600 a week. And when they couldn't find that agreement you're talking about, it just vanished. There was no extension by the president. And then we have to think about the long-term unemployed. John, this shot up by 50% between September and October. You can link it, as Alan Greenspan, the former Fed chair, was saying, right with the virus. So the virus starts to spike, you see the jobless benefits wiped away, and long-term unemployed, unable to find work again beyond 27 weeks. That's another nearly 4 million people. We're talking some serious numbers here as the programs fade away.
Okay, so we're 40 days or something away from the end of the year until all of this happens. We know that this bill before Congress has gone nowhere. I guess, what are the chances that something will happen, given that Trump is stalling the transition and the transfer of power? And again, what if it doesn't? I mean, you'll not only have the pain of the pandemic, but you have this economic disaster on your hands as well.
Well, yeah, this is something that Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, was saying, in addition to what Greenspan had to say to CNN. He said, come on, let's stop the madness and park the politics. Now, we saw a hint at the close of trading yesterday that Chuck Schumer reached out to Mitch McConnell, his counterpart, who's the majority leader in the Senate, saying they may restart the talks along with Nancy Pelosi, who's the Speaker of the House. We have to mind the gap again, John, something we've talked about for the last 4 months. The House package is $2.2 trillion. The White House got up to $2 trillion. Mitch McConnell, because of budgetary reasons, is looking at $500 billion. So they can go back to the bargaining table. How do you close that gap is the big alarm. And to your point here, as the programs expire and they don't park their political differences during a vote recount right now, we see that jobless benefits shot up yesterday for the first time in 5 weeks. Historically high, still hovering around 760,000. So to answer your question, John, it's going to get a lot worse with the case spike, and then going into the first quarter of 2021 without a program, in a word, is disastrous.
Yeah, John, thank you. John Defterios, live in Abu Dhabi. Appreciate it. Still to come, one emergency room doctor knows the battle of COVID-19 all too well. His message after finding himself a patient in his own ER. That's next. Also, the US Secretary of State makes an historic visit, but it comes with a lot of criticism. Details next.
country's DNA, meeting people who will share its secrets.
It's like uncovering treasure.
And making discoveries that wow.
I always wanted to be a leaf peeper.
It's a world of wonder. Now, go and see it. Sunday on CNN, in association with Turkish Airlines.
People are still yearning to travel, but they're traveling differently than they used to. They're not crossing borders, they're not traveling for business, but what they're doing is they're getting in a car and they're going 200 or 300 miles to nearby destinations and they're staying in homes. What the guests have told us is they'd rather be in the private space of an Airbnb than a crowded hotel lobbies or crowded elevators. And one of the things we did is we brought in the former Surgeon General of the United States, Dr. Vivek Murthy, and we worked with him to develop this enhanced cleaning protocol, which is basically cleaning guidelines the host can get trained on and go through. More than 1 million listings have already gone through the cleaning guideline, and we're working really, really hard for this. But what we're hearing is people don't want to stay in crowded cities. They want to have a home to themselves. And this is why I think homes are becoming a really, really popular way for people to travel.
On the next Living Golf, it's the inaugural Saudi Ladies International. See how the Ladies European Tour are making history.
You see different swings and different techniques, and you have to find whatever works for you.
At this first of its kind event, and hear from the renowned architect of the Royal Greens Golf Course.
Looking at the landscapes, we definitely saw opportunity.
Living Golf, Saturday on CNN. In association with Golf Saudi.
여기까지 하겠습니다.
Mike Pompeo is now the first US Secretary of State to visit a settlement in the West Bank on Thursday. These settlements are considered illegal.